Welcome to The Archive Speaks, a podcast from the Refugee Archive. In this series, we document the journeys of refugee women who lead households, rebuild communities, and carry stories that often go unheard. These oral histories reflect the personal memories and truths of those who tell them, shaped by time, trauma, and resilience. The Refugee Archive holds space for these voices, without political alignment or editorial interference. In this episode, we continue the story of Ataa, a young Syrian woman whose life was reshaped by war, displacement, and resilience. Last time, we followed her harrowing journey from being shot in Syria to her eventual arrival at Zaatari Camp in Jordan. Today, we enter the next chapter. What happens after the crossing? How does a woman rebuild her life in a refugee camp, first as a daughter, then as a wife, and eventually as a mother raising 4 children, often alone? This episode traces the quiet strength and daily decisions that define survival for many women like Ataa, women who hold their families together through uncertainty, loss, and unrelenting change.
So for the first moment, when we arrived at the camp, it was completely something different of my previous life. I realized that this is not the same place I used to live. And I realized that there is no houses, there's no buildings, there's no schools, no universities. I just realized that it is completely desert and there's even no tree. At that time, I hope that I'm able to see one flower on the ground and even one tree. There were not any house, there were not like beautiful buildings. It's just like a ground and it's like a space. And this space is full with tents. And all tents are similar to each other. You can't distinguish between the tents, the shape or the color for each tent because they were all similar. For example, if you want to find your tent, if after you go to hospital, after you go to buy something, when you want to get back to your tent, you will definitely be lost. I'm sure about that. So if you want to go to buy something, and when you want to get back to your tent, you will definitely be lost. And this is what happened with me for the first time in this camp. As I said, it was completely different place, a different environment. And also for the food, at the first time, it was really hard to get vegetables and fruit because everything at the beginning will be hard. And this camp at the beginning was so hard to be a completely healthy environment for everyone, especially for kids. So for example, when I was sick at the first time, when I came here, and I really wanted healthy food, like fruit, like vegetables. And I remember that time my dad was struggling to ask someone to get out to the camp to bring some vegetables and to bring some fruit for me. There was no streets, no shops. There were no big stores for selling vegetables, fruit. Even if you want to get water, healthy water to drink, it will be hard to get. You have to buy this healthy water because the ordinary water that we got that time wasn't that much quality, because as Syrian people, we used to drink very healthy water and we don't pay for that. But when we came here to the camp, even the water was completely different. The smell, the taste of the water was completely different. So that in order to get healthy water, you have to buy it. You have to pay money to get the healthy water. For the food, it was not huge meals like maybe the government of the camp was giving people some small meals like some lentil, some rice, some burgle. It was not like huge food. And also, I remember that time we got that kind of food that you could keep in containers, like fish, not that quality fish. In general, it was just some dry food like rice, burgle, lentil, and we were cooking soup, we were cooking rice, we were cooking burgle. It was just a hard time at the beginning. And then slowly things started to be much better than before. Like we started to get small stores for buying vegetables and for buying fruits. For the first time, it was allowed to use both currency, the Syrian and the Jordanian. And as newcomers here, we didn't have the Jordanian currency. We just had the Syrian currency, and it was okay to use the Syrian currency. So that's why it was easy to buy some food, to buy some fruits or vegetables. Even if you don't have it in the camp, you can ask someone to get it from outside the camp. When we came here as a family that contained 4 people, we were not even, yeah, we were not allowed to get more than two ten more. Oh my God. I am lost. I'm sorry. I remembered my brother. No. I remembered my brother. Okay, let me try.
Ataa took a moment here to collect her thoughts, a memory of her brother resurfacing. He was the one who came with her to the camp, but after returning to Syria, he was killed in an airstrike. Her sister, who never left Syria, also passed away. Since the start of the war, Ataa has lost 2 siblings, both in the country they once hoped to survive.
When I came here with my family, which contained 4 people, we were not allowed to get 2 tents because here, when you come as a small family with 4 people, you have to get just 1 tent. So for me, I was not comfortable with that because I was a single daughter, and also we had my brother who was 2 years older than me. So he was 18 and I was 20. So we were not comfortable with that. And I didn't feel like it's the appropriate place to sleep in. And then I told my dad, and he said, maybe we can try tomorrow to ask them to get us another tent because you are sick, and maybe they will give us another tent. And this is really what happened. He went to the office for the UNHCR, who are responsible of the refugee advocacy, and then he asked them to give us another tent for me. And I was so happy because they gave us another tent. So now we had 2 tents. We paired them to each other, and we put my tent door completely close to my parents' tent. So they made it this way because they wanted to protect me from other people in the camp. And I was less sad that time because I finally got at least another place like I could sleep safe and I could have some privacy with my mom, not with my dad and my brother. So then we had 2 tents. The first tent was for my dad and my brother, and the second tent was for my mom and me.
For many women, displacement brings more than the loss of home. It unravels the social safety nets and protections that once helped them move through the world with some degree of freedom or familiarity. In this next part of her story, Ataa shares what it meant to navigate life as a young, single woman in Zaatari Camp, where uncertainty and instability made everyday movement feel risky, and where safety often depended on the company you kept. What begins as an account of fear and constraint slowly gives way to resilience, routine, and reimagining the future. This is how Ataa started to rebuild her sense of agency, in the company of family, through quiet walks, and eventually, in the decision to stay and make something of life in the camp.
As a single women living in a camp. It wasn't an easy life for me, because you can't imagine the number of people here in the camp, especially the first time. Many huge number of people came together, and those people were not just old people. Most of them were young guys, and we can't imagine all guys are the same polite and the same kind and the same respect. So I was try to be conservative as much as I can, especially that I belong to a really conservative family. And also, I try to not go out alone in the camp. So that's why I try to go whenever I want to go. I try to take my brother and ask him to go with me. And if my brother is not here, I can ask my mom. I wanted to go and walk. Especially that I was sick and I wanted to breathe. So I was asking my mom and I was asking my brother. I was lucky because my aunt was living in the camp before we go there. So she was before us in the camp and she knows the camp more than us. And when I told her that I feel bored and I don't feel good, she was reassuring me and she was calming me down all the time, and she was walking with me and take me to a small walk in the camp. So that's why I was protected. I tried my best to not go outside alone because it is really dangerous to go. We were hearing many stories about girls in the camp that were harassed and they got some bad stories in the camp. So that's why my family decided not to get me into these troubles, and they tried to protect me as much as they can. And also I wanted to protect myself. I don't want to get into these troubles at all, because my only focus that time was how to involve my education again into my life, how to get an education even in the camp. I was trying to study even in the camp. I wasn't trying to find bad friends in the camp, and I also tried to ignore many groups of girls or many friends, or even I tried to completely ignore strangers, even girls, even women. I was trying to stay involved to my family, to my relatives, more than friends, because I was ignoring the idea to get new friends of those friends that I had in Syria, because they were my best friends and I didn't want to change them at all with these friends in the camp. I don't remember I was directly harassed by anyone. As I said, I tried as much as I can to ignore people, especially guys, and also ignore strangers. And I also try to stay with my family, especially when I go outside the tent, and also when I go to buy something. I was going with my dad more, so I didn't go alone because it wasn't safe at all. It was really easy to bad guys to do anything they want that time, because all people were strangers, and if they want to do anything bad, no one could know them and no one could recognize them. So that's why we had to be more aware of these things, and I had to be careful as much as I can. When things started to stabilize easily and slowly, we got a caravan. We didn't stay in the tent for more than 1 month, and I was so happy for that. We got a caravan in the second month when we were there at that time. So I was so happy that time because at least I had a caravan. And this caravan is bigger than the tent, and is much better than the tent. It has at least 2 windows, and it's similar to the house. So I realized that things are much better now, and I had to accept the idea to stay more in the camp, because we were hearing about what was going on in Syria, and things in Syria were developing in a bad way, At the same time, things in the camp were going much better by day. So that time, I realized that there is no problem if I stayed in the camp for a short time, or maybe if I stayed to protect myself, and maybe there is no problem if I adapt to this life in the camp. So I started to think differently about the camp, and even at the first time when I came to the camp, because that time all my thinking and everything was going in my brain about coming back to Syria and completing my education and even meeting my friends. But when things started to stabilize, I started to think more deeply about the life here in the camp, and I started to think maybe rationally, because even if I think about getting back to Syria, no one will accept my idea. So I wanted to accept the reality for the life, and I wanted to accept my parents' idea. So I was less sad that time. I was so happy because I had a caravan. I was happy because my aunt was there with us. You can say that she was like my new friend that time, because she wasn't that much older than me. She was about 5 or 6 years older than me. So we were like friends. And I told her about everything was going with me in my life in Syria. And I was telling her about everything. And I was telling her about the time I was shot and how did we decide to get to the camp. Because when I was in Syria, I wasn't in touch with her because she didn't get internet connection all the time and she didn't get much time. I started to change my mind about the camp slowly, and I started to change my way of thinking. I started to, instead of thinking about getting back to Syria, I have to think about developing myself here and getting education here, and maybe try to get any opportunity to work or even study or even fulfill my life and my time. And instead of just sitting down and thinking about how will I get back to Syria, because I am completely sure that even if I think about this point, I'm not getting any good result, because we are staying for even more than 1 year.
After months of displacement, Ataa's parents made the difficult decision to return to Syria, believing their daughter was now safe in marriage and on her way to motherhood. For Ataa, their departure marked the first time she would face camp life without her family. In contexts like Zaatari, where women's safety often depends on being accompanied, her transition into married life was also a transition into greater responsibility and isolation.
My parents decided to leave the camp after I got married and after I was pregnant in my first son. I was in the 5th month of my pregnancy, and that time they decided to get back after they are sure that I'm safe and after they are sure that I have someone to take care of me, which was my husband. They didn't like the life in the camp at all. They were just pretending that everything is fine until I got married, until they thought that I'm safe and they thought that I will be adapting the life here with my husband. And then they suddenly decided to get back to Syria because my brother wanted to get back. So my mom can't live with us without my brother because he was the younger son for her. It started with my brother idea, then my mom accepted, then my dad said that how will we go without Ataa? But then eventually they went because they had to. They wanted to get back to their life and their house. And don't forget, they also have another brother they left in Syria. So after they were sure that I am fine, I started to be happy with my husband, and I was completely happy with my first pregnancy. Then they decided to go. I didn't accept the idea at all at the first time when they told me. But when my dad talked and he convinced me, and I said, okay, you can do whatever you want as long as you are happy and as long as you are sure that you will be happy there. Because I was sure that the war didn't finish yet. And we were hearing every time about how things are even worse than before. They didn't spend that much time in the camp because I got married after maybe 7 or 8 months.
Marriage in displacement can carry a weight beyond tradition. For Ataa, her decision to marry was not forced, but born from frustration, hope, and a deep desire to reclaim control over her life. In a setting where returning to Syria no longer seemed possible, she married the first man who promised her a path back to university and home. What followed was a story shaped by pregnancy, loss, and adaptation, where the boundaries between choice and survival grew increasingly complex.
It was a funny story, but definitely no one told me or no one forced me to get married with my husband. But you know what? I just wanted to get married. And I think it was a silly, stupid decision because that time I was not completely sure about what will happen. I was not completely sure whether this is the good or the appropriate decision that I took for the whole of my life. So let me tell you first about what happened before I got married. I didn't give up and I asked my parents to get back to Syria more than once, even after we got the caravan. I tried to adapt as much as I could, but I couldn't completely adapt. So that's why every time, like you can say every month, I just remind my parents, you promised me to get back to Syria. Why didn't you get back yet? And then when they started to ignore my questions and ignore the idea completely, I just tried to get married with the first one who proposed me. And my husband was the first one. And that time, my husband was the first one who proposed me in the camp, not in Syria. I got proposed in Syria, but I completely ignored the idea because I was happy and they didn't want to force me to do that because I was studying in my university. If you remember, I told you that when we continue the secondary school, we both got proposed to. My twin and me got proposed, but my twin, my sister, wanted to get married, and she did, and I refused the idea, and I wanted to continue my education. So we both chose our life. No one forced us. She chose to get married, and I chose to continue my education. But here, when I came to the camp and my dad started to ignore my wishes and my idea to get back, I decided like I wanted to do that by force. I wanted to do that intentionally. The friend of my old sister, she just knows my family. So when we came to the camp, she came to our caravan and she was spending time with us because she was my old sister friends. So when she was coming to visit us and staying with me, my husband was her friend and he was coming and walking with them to my caravan because, as I mentioned before, it is not safe for any girl or any woman to walk alone. So if you want to go to your friend, if you want to go to any place, it is much better to go with your brother or with your cousin, with your brother friend, with anyone you know. She was coming to visit me in my caravan. He was walking with her and with her brother. And when he saw me, he asked her, like, I wanna propose your friend, Ata. And she told me about that. And I told her, ask him if he will get me back to Syria, I will accept him as a husband. And he said yes. They were all lying at me that time. And that's why I said, okay, tell him that I want to continue my education and I want to get back to my university. If he accepts this idea, it will be fine to accept to get married to him. And it will be fine to maybe think about this proposal firstly. And she was telling me that he completely accepts your wishes. He likes education very much and he wants you to get back to your university and to resume your education. So I was thinking, okay, why not? He will get me back to Syria and I will get back to my university instead of staying here in this bad camp. I told her, tell him that first I want to get back to Syria and then I want to get back to my university. And if he accepts that, after we get married, he will do that immediately after the first or the second month. And he brought his family and he brought his relatives to propose me, and things happened and we got married. So no one forced me to do that. So yes, I accepted and we got married. And he told me that we will get back to Syria. After the first time of my marriage, I was so happy with him. I really tried. I really started to change my mind a little bit because now I am pregnant. And being a pregnant woman in Syria will be so hard. How will you walk in this war? How will you go and hide yourself? Especially after I had a bad experience of being shot. I was really scared, even when I just hear about the war. And also after I have another person in my belly, I have to think more rational way. And then after I got pregnant in my 5th month, my dad and my mom decided to get back to Syria. And I started to convince them not to get back. The opposite things happened. They convinced me to not get back to Syria, and now I'm trying to convince them to not get back to Syria. Because I'm pregnant now, I really need them to stay. I really want them to see my first son. I really need them to be with me when I gave birth, when I gave my first kid. I really wanted to share these beautiful moments with them. And also, I really wanted them to be safe and to be happy. I didn't want them to get into these troubles and into this dangerous time in Syria. But they didn't want me to, they didn't accept and they wanted to get back. And that's what happened. They got back and I stayed alone here with my husband in my pregnancy. And I gave birth without any of them. I remember when we were in Syria, my sisters had many beautiful things for their marriage. They had many things, more than I had. Because I got married here, I didn't have these machines like this fridge, this laundry machine. I didn't get even bed to sleep on. I didn't get that. And even I didn't get a wardrobe to put my clothes in. So I just had to put my clothes in the bag. And also I had to sleep on the ground with them. But it was like, as I told you, things started to develop. And after that, we had a big bed and he bought me a small wardrobe. When people started to buy and bring these furnitures from outside the camp. So when they brought these stuffs and these furnitures, he immediately brought me a wardrobe and a bed.
Motherhood and displacement is rarely quiet or uncomplicated. In Zaatari Camp, an estimated 19,000 women of reproductive age lived by 2013, with roughly 2,300 pregnant at any given time. Eventually, Ataa became one of these women. Not just once, but 4 times.
So I got pregnant at the second month of my marriage. So my husband was so happy because he wanted to be a dad. And especially that he belonged to a family and to a community that like guys so much at that time. And I was really so happy because he was so happy. But my sadness was just because I didn't want, at the beginning, I didn't want to give birth in the camp. This is my sadness. But after that, I tried to continue to completely accept the point, and I was really thinking about just staying with my husband and this new child and this baby. And I really like the babies, and I really wanted to try this experience to be a mom for the first time. And I wanted to get into the experience of motherhood, and I was really wanted to see my husband happy. So that's why I was so happy when we realized that I am pregnant. I wanted to have my parents with me when I see my first child. It was not a good feeling. I cried a lot, and I tried to convince them for the last moment, but I eventually couldn't do anything more than just I accepted the idea and accepted the reality because they will leave. How did I give birth in the camp? I remember I was visiting a hospital here in the camp for checking my pregnant, for making sure that everything is going fine. And then eventually, when I was in my ninth month, the doctors decided to take me outside the camp because they decided that like I passed my time and I didn't give birth in my time. So that's why they decided to take me outside the camp and make a surgery. But they took me outside the camp with my husband aunt. She went with me outside the camp. So I didn't give birth in the camp. I gave birth for my first son outside the camp in this area outside next to the camp in this Mafraq city. And after that, after I gave birth, and I remember that I took my son photo to my husband and I sent him on WhatsApp, and he was so happy that time. I was completely happy when I saw him. And I really took photos when he was without clothes at the first time when they brought him from my belly. It was really strange, and people were laughing at me when I was telling them that. And they were saying that you are so strong woman because at this time you should be completely tired and you should be sleeping after giving birth. And I said I just wanted to take the picture and then I sleep. This is what I did. When they just took my son from my belly, I just took a photo for him at the first moment, and then I slept because I wanted to remind him it was your first moment in the life, and I just took a photo to show you when you are old to my son. And I think I still have this photo, or maybe my husband still had this photo in his device. So yes, I wanted to make this as a very amazing memory. After that, I slept. They didn't allow my husband to go with me outside the camp because the car was full with women. I remember we were more than 3 women in the car, and each woman should have just one woman with her. And I remember all those women was with their moms, but I was the only one without my mom. So my husband and his relatives decided we can ask my aunt to go with her. Aunt went with me instead of my mom. And I was so happy for that. And I was so grateful for her because she spent the whole night with me. And I was really tired and I was screaming, shouting all the time because before you give birth, it's not really easy time. And I was not relaxed and I was really tired and I was struggling all the time. This car was like a small van that included 3 pregnant women more than me. So with me, we were 4 pregnant women with 4 moms. Like each woman has to bring her mom with her. So we were about 8 people in the van. It was fun. It wasn't that much bad. So there were 3 big chairs. So for each chair, like every woman could sit with her mom, and it was completely fine. We were fine. We didn't have any problem with that. So I have 4 kids, 2 daughters and 2 sons. My old son name is Ahmed. And as I told you, I gave birth to Ahmed outside the camp in Mafraq city. It was Sunday. I remember it was a summer day. It wasn't cold. And the other daughter is Shada. Her name is Shada. And Shada was unique, and she's still unique, I think. You know why? Because I gave birth for Shada in the 29 February. Do you know that? She is completely rare and unique girl. I really adore this daughter. Yes. So I gave birth of Shada on Monday. It was 29 February. So it was about cold night.
Pursuing higher education is a challenge in any circumstance. Imagine doing so while raising 2 children in a refugee camp. Ataa had once been the only girl in her family to reach university in Syria. Years later, in Zaatari, she returned to her books, this time with a child in her arms and another on the way. Like thousands of displaced women, Ataa navigated motherhood, loss, and responsibility alongside a quiet determination to reclaim her dreams. And when the opportunity came, she didn't just resume her education, she chose a path she truly loved. Please note, the audio quality shifts in this section due to a change in recording devices during the interview.
I've got a scholarship to resume my education at a Jordanian university while raising 2 kids. It was such a joyful moment. My husband was still with us at that time. I was working in relief international schools in the camp when I heard that they were offering scholarships for students who had not been able to finish university in Syria. Most of the applicants were younger than me, and many were still in secondary school. But I thought, why not apply? And I wanted to try. My grades had been excellent, and I knew that this scholarship favored high achievers. After 2 weeks of waiting, I hadn't heard back until one day at the end of my work shift. My husband called me and said, "Congratulations, they called me and you have been accepted. And your interview is next week." I was so happy and I jumped up and I told him that I love you because I was really super happy that time. It was one of the happiest moments I had in the camp, right alongside the joy of raising my first son. At the interview, they told me that I was the best candidate they saw that day. That was when I knew my dream would be resumed, this time in a different field. Back in Syria, I had been studying childhood development, but in Jordan, I chose English literature, even though I was also accepted to study pharmacy. So I just wanted to follow my passion for languages, especially English. I wanted to study something I truly loved, not just what others expected. For my first day at university in Jordan, it was nothing like my first day in my university in Syria. There, in Syria, I had friends and familiarity. But here, I was alone, and I had to stay focused because I wasn't just a student anymore. I was a student and a mom at the same time. There were 2 children are waiting for me, and maybe they are hungry or missing me. It was another challenge, but of course, I didn't want to give up. And also in my final semester, I was pregnant with my 3rd kid, Kala. And it was really such a hard time because I had to study and suffer with my pregnancy at the same time. But I did it. And when I graduated, we celebrated the baby Tala in my arms.
By now, Ataa is raising 4 children alone. Her husband left just 5 months after their youngest was born. Since then, she's balanced parenting, teaching, and household work entirely on her own. Life in the camp leaves little room for rest, With limited transport, even basic tasks take time. But Ataa stays focused, dividing her days between her children, her students, and her home.
Being a mom with 4 kids now, they are all together, it is not easy, as you see. I'm trying to organize and to arrange my time and manage my time as much as I can. For example, I divide my time for many small tasks. For example, I just try to put the time for cleaning and put time for cooking, put time for sitting with them and playing with them. And also don't forget that I have another time for teaching because I'm working online. So it is not a very easy responsibility, but I can manage as much as I can and I can organize my time. So I have no time for resting, or I have no time for visiting people. I have no time for sitting with my neighbors. For example, when I want to visit my neighbor, I just try to find one day or 1 hour among the whole day so that I don't lose anything from my duties with my kids and also from my responsibilities and also from my work. It is not easy. You have to go outside and break many crosses for kids. Like you have to go to the mall. If your son is sick or if your daughter is sick, you have to go with them to the hospital. And everything takes time here in the camp because you have to walk a lot. You don't have any car, so you have to walk. I just try to do many things. That's why I find myself, at the end of the day, I find myself exhausted. But I am so proud because I completed everything. And I will be proud because at the end of the day, I feeded my kids, I cleaned the house, I worked, and I taught my students remotely. And I did everything I have to do as a mom for 4 kids. It's not easy, it's exhausting, but it's at the same time, I'm so proud of that. I think I really have many duties to do as just one person. I'm one person, but I am divided into many persons. I have to be a dad for them, and I have to be a mom. I have to be a teacher for them when they have exams. And also, I have to follow up with their homework daily. Don't forget that the 2 oldest are in school and they have homework daily. I have to follow up with them. And also, when they have tasks, when they have exams, I have to teach them. And they always say that you are much better than our teachers. And that teacher, their mom, their dad, and also their friend. I also always play with them. I don't want them really, we don't want them to feel that they are lonely. They are in a camp. So I just try as much as I can to make a good environment that surrounded them to be happy.
When Ataa's husband left for Europe, she remained in Zaatari with 4 young children. He crossed the Mediterranean in search of opportunity, but she had already passed her IELTS and held the qualifications many refugees lacked. She had legal avenues to leave, but she stayed. This story reflects gendered migration patterns well documented among Syrian refugees. In many displaced Syrian households, men feel immense pressure to fulfill traditional roles as economic providers, even as those roles become increasingly unattainable. As a result, many pursue high-risk, irregular migration routes despite the dangers, while women are left to sustain family life alone in the camps. In Zaatari and other camps, this has led to a quiet shift in household power. With men gone or absent, women like Ataa are left to become the primary caregivers, breadwinners, and decision-makers, often without recognition or support. She didn't just stay behind. She held together the home he left.
The beginning was that his friends decided to go abroad and to go outside the camp, even to go to Europe countries illegally. So in this case, if you go illegally, you are not allowed to get back to Jordan. I accepted the idea to get to the Europe countries, but I rejected the idea to go illegally. So I just suggested, why don't you wait and let me see what can I do? Maybe I can find anyone to sponsor me. Maybe I can find any scholarship, because I really had two certificates and I really tried to get my IELTS, and I did it and passed my IELTS exam. And I was all the time trying to find any scholarship that enable me to go outside legally, not illegally. He just suggested him, why don't you wait and let me see what can I do? Maybe I could find any scholarship to get out legally, and maybe I could find anyone to sponsor me even to Canada or even to the USA. And I eventually found, but when I found someone to sponsor me, he wasn't here. He was outside. He was in Libya. So he just convinced me and he said, what if you didn't find anyone? And that time, many people in the camp started to think about this idea and this illegally way to go to the Europe countries. We were hearing all the time that one of his friend left, and he is in Libya, and he crossed Libya by the Mediterranean Sea, and he is in Germany now, and the other one is in Netherlands. And people start to get jealous of each other, and they want to do the same thing that their friends do. So this is what happened with my husband and with his friends. And then they just decided, and then they left. I remember that day. It was not an easy day at all, because I convinced him not to do that for the last moment. I want him, and even after he booked for his flight, I just suggested that, just okay, if you want to go illegally, just let us go with you. And in this case, we can stay with each other. You don't have to stay alone, and we don't have to stay alone without you, and kids don't have to stay alone with their dad. But he said that I can go illegally because it's really dangerous, and I can't get you into troubles in the sea. I can maybe sacrifice myself just for you. So we wanted to he wanted to make sure that he sacrificed one person in order to maybe risk or to save people like me and my kids. So yes, he left. I remember it was Friday in June. And yes, he left, and we stayed communicating in WhatsApp for the first day night. And he was telling me where he is, and he was telling me even like he is now in the flight. And then he told me when he arrived to Libya, and then he started to tell me everything and every detail, every single detail. And then slowly he said, we're not going to stay in this place. They wanted to change the place, and they wanted to get to the Europe from the capital of Libya. And then when they crossed, they didn't pass, unfortunately, and they sank. They drowned in the sea, and they lost 5 of his friends who were with them in the same boat. It was like a trauma for me when his cousin called, and she told me that your husband is lost. No one knows where he is now because his boat drowned in the sea, and this boat lost 5 people so far. So it was really like a trauma, and I started to cry. I didn't tell my kids why I'm crying. They were asking me, Mama, what's going on? Why are you crying? And I was telling my belly is hurting. And the next day, when people here started to come to me and asking about my husband, my kids knew about that. And I can't even describe how my daughter Shada was crying, because she thought, and we all thought, that he's dead. And alhamdulillah, next day, his cousin called from Libya, the cousin that was with him. He called us, and he said, your husband is safe, don't worry. He is with me now in the hospital. Yeah. So the Tunisian government found them, and they took them to the hospital, the Tunisian hospital. And this was the way that he left from Libya to Tunisia. He didn't want to go to Tunisia, but they were lost in the sea and their boat drowned. And that time he lost his passport, and he lost his papers, his card, his phone, and even his wallet. He lost everything in the sea. Alhamdulillah that they saved him. Yes, so that was really hard time for me. Yeah, it was really trauma, and it wasn't easy when they called me and they told me that your husband is lost and we didn't find him yet. I thought that it was the end of everything, and I lost him completely. And I remember just when I warned him and I told him, please don't go this illegal way and stay with us, and we can go, even this way we can go together, all together. So yes, the next day he texts me on WhatsApp not from his number, because he lost his phone in the sea. He calmed me down and he said, don't cry, I'm fine. And he sent me a picture of him. I remember his body was full with burn, but at least alhamdulillah that he was still alive. Yes, at least he was safe that time. And yeah, I stopped crying. I felt a little bit happy. I was a little bit calm. And yes, I told people that he's fine now and he's safe. And the Tunisian government saved him with some of his friends. So the first time they saved them and they took them to a hospital, they gave them some medication and they stayed in the hospital for 2 days, and then they gave them a house for 1 month. And then after this month, they have to leave and find any other place, and they have to find any job to pay for the rental house. They gave them a new card for refugees, but I don't remember they gave them any other money or help, like medicine help or something. But they, as I said, at the first month, they gave them a place like to live in for the first month, and they gave them medication, and they renewed their card. But this time was from Tunisia, not from, because my husband, his refugee's card from Jordan. When he lost it in the sea, the Tunisian government gave them another one from Tunisia country. Now he stayed without job for the second month, and then he found a small job, and by this job he couldn't send me or send anything for kids, and it was completely fine because I just wanted him to be safe and to be healthy. He was barely eat and he was barely find any rest time because he was suffering a lot, thinking about us and thinking about any way to send us money. But I asked him, don't care about us, just care about yourself. I know that you can't find job now.
When a husband leaves, the absence reshapes everything. In Zaatari Camp, where many households are headed by women, departures like this are not uncommon, but each one carries a weight of its own. For Ataa, his decision meant more than physical distance. It marked a turning point in her life as a mother, provider, and protector. What follows is her account of adjusting to life alone, while holding together the family he left behind.
So for me, it was really so hard. You know why? Because I didn't used to do anything by going to the mall, by going to stores. When he was here, he was doing all these things for me. He was going to the mall and bring food, bring things, many stuffs. And even when we had any sick, he was taking them to the hospital instead of me. He was helping me so much when he was here, of course. So that's why it was really a hard time when he left us at the beginning. I just realized the differences when he is not here, especially the first month. I was every time telling him that who will go to the mall now? Who will go to the hospital? Who will go to bring food? Who will go to the bakery to bring bread? He used to do that for me. He used to do that because he wanted to help me, and also because he was the man. And in his community, the man is supposed to do these things, not the woman. I didn't want to go to the bakery. I didn't want to go to bring food. I didn't want to go to bring groceries. I didn't want to go to the mall. Even I didn't want to go and wait for about 2 hours or 3 hours in the hospital in order just to get a small medication for my son. But my husband was going with him. So this is why I struggled a lot at the first time when he left us. And then slowly I started to accept, and I started to encourage myself and to stand on my feet and to do all these duties that he was doing just by myself. I had to go to the hospital. I started to go to the hospital with my kids. I started to go to the mall, but I was asking all the time, I was asking my neighbor to go with me to compare me to the mall because I really don't like to go alone. I am mom now of 4 kids, but I don't feel safe when I go alone in the camp. So that's why sometimes I ask my old son now to go with me, and I sometimes ask my neighbor to go if I want to buy something from the store. I ask her, can you come and go with me? We can have fun time together, and we can go together. Yes, I didn't feel happy. I struggled. I felt sad when he left. I realized there is something different at the first time when he left us. But I just started to accept and to do everything because I have to do everything. I don't have to ask anyone, and even if I ask, I won't find anyone to do anything for me because people are all busy with their families, with their own things. We still living in the same shelter. We still living in the same place, the same caravan since he left us. Because I wanted to change actually, but he told me you don't have to change because all people here around you, I mean, you are safe. You know everyone here in the neighborhood, and you won't feel safe when you change the shelter. So yes, we didn't change anything. I just changed my card, my refugee card, because when he was here, he was with us, his picture. But after he left, I had to change it, and they had to exclude him from our refugee card. So for now, our refugee card just for me and for my kids. It doesn't have my husband. For the first time, I didn't tell my kids that their dad left to Libya. My kids stayed for about 4 months, knowing that their dad is outside the camp in Jordan.
Ataa is one of tens of thousands of women in Zaatari Camp, navigating life as the head of a household. As of recent years, many families in the camp are led by women, many due to separation, death, or displacement of male family members. These women carry the full weight of parenthood, work, and survival in conditions never meant to last this long. For Ataa, the journey has included marriage, childbirth, loss, and the daily realities of raising 4 children on her own. But now, she's beginning to look outward. Her story, once something private, is becoming something she feels responsible to share, not for pity, but for recognition, for representation, and maybe, in some small way, for change. As she says, there's a strong woman in this camp, and she wants the world to know.
When I share some things with my students, with people I talk to, when I share everything about my life, they always suggest that you really have a very interesting life and you have to share this story, your story, for the whole and the entire world. And I say, inshallah, one day I will be able to tell my story for the entire world and tell everyone that here is a very strong woman living in a camp, and maybe defend her rights and defend her motherhood and trying to do everything for her kids despite the struggling, despite of the hard time that she passed on, but she's still fighting for her kids and for her future. So that's why I really decided to share after I realized that I really had many things in my life. I had many things that worth to show to people. And even of all and although all these things or the hardness that I had in my life, I think I'm still alive and I'm still fighting for my kids and for myself and for my motherhood. So that's why I thought and I realized that I had many things that worthy to show to people in the camp and to people in Syria. I just realized that I had many things to show the entire world. Yes.
In the next episode of The Archive Speaks, we trace Ataa's story from the early days of her marriage to the moment everything changed. In the face of uncertainty, Ataa opens up about the everyday challenges of leading a household alone, the strength it takes, and the quiet dignity she refuses to let go of. And in the end, she offers a rare reflection on what the world often gets wrong about women like her and what still needs to be seen. The Archive Speaks is produced by the Refugee Archive, a small team of women across the globe brought together through advocacy and intention. This is a community-rooted project. That means we need you, the listeners, to help shape what this becomes. If you want to support our cause, subscribe to our newsletter, The Refugee Archive, on Substack, because when more of us listen, more of them speak. Are you a refugee woman with a story to share? Are you an archivist, academic, or advocate with research to contribute? Get in touch and email us on substack.all.hands@gmail.com. You can learn more about the Archive Speaks and the Refugee Archive in the show notes.